Researchers discovered a critical SQL injection flaw in a system used by airlines that could potentially allow unauthorized individuals to bypass TSA security checks and even access airplane cockpits. If you've ever stood in those long security lines at the airport, you might be wondering, was all that hassle for nothing? And what does this mean for the millions of passengers who rely on these security measures every day? In this video, we'll explore the shocking discovery that exposed a critical flaw in airport security systems, and discuss how a simple SQL injection could potentially allow unauthorized access to secure areas and even aircraft cockpits. So, how exactly could someone potentially skip airport security with just a bit of coding knowledge? Let's break it down in simple terms. Imagine you're at the airport, watching enviously as pilots and flight attendants race through a special security lane. This fast track is part of a program called Known Crew Member, or KCM for short. It's designed to let verified airline staff bypass the usual security song and dance we all go through. Now, you might be thinking, great, but I'm not a pilot or a flight attendant. Well, that's where our cybersecurity researchers Carol and Sam Curry come in. They discovered a vulnerability that could potentially allow anyone to add themselves to this exclusive club. Here's how it works. Airlines use a system to check if someone is really part of their crew. For bigger airlines, this system is usually pretty robust. But for smaller airlines, there is often a third-party service handling these checks. One such service is called Flycast. Now, Flycast isn't exactly a household name, but it plays a crucial role in airport security. It's the gatekeeper that decides who gets to skip the security line and who doesn't. And that's where our researchers found a chink in the armor. They discovered that Flycast had a vulnerability called SQL injection. In simple terms, this means that the system wasn't properly checking the information it was given. It's like a bouncer at a club who's supposed to check IDs, but instead just lets anyone in who says, "I'm on the list." Using this vulnerability, the researchers were able to log into the Flycast system as if they were administrators for an airline. And once they were in, they could add anyone they wanted to the list of approved crew members. That means they could potentially create a fake employee profile, complete with a photo, and authorize it for both known crew member program and something called CAS, the Cockpit Access Security System. Now, CAS is another level entirely. It's the system that allows pilots to hop into the cockpit's jump seat. You know, that extra seat behind the pilots when they need to travel. So this vulnerability wasn't just about skipping security lines, it could potentially allow unauthorized access to the cockpit itself. Let that sink in for a moment. A simple coding flaw could have allowed someone to not only bypass airport security, but also gain access to the most secure part of an aircraft. But before you start panicking and swearing off air travel forever, let's take a deep breath. Our researchers are the good guys. As soon as they discovered this vulnerability, they immediately reported it to the Department of Homeland Security. The system was quickly taken offline and fixed. Now, you might be wondering, how could something like this happen? Aren't there checks and balances in place? Well, that's the tricky thing about cybersecurity. It's a constant cat-and-mouse game between security experts and potential attackers. In this case, the vulnerability stemmed from a common coding mistake called SQL injection. SQL, which stands for Structured Query Language, is what databases use to communicate. When a system doesn't properly sanitize the input it receives, it can be tricked into executing commands it shouldn't. Imagine you're at a restaurant, and instead of just giving your order to the waiter, you could somehow slip in instructions to the chef to give you a free dessert. That's kind of what SQL injection does. It sneaks extra instructions into a system's normal operations. But here's where it gets really interesting. When our cybersecurity researchers tried to responsibly disclose their findings, they ran into some unexpected turbulence. The Department of Homeland Security initially took the issue seriously, which is great. The vulnerable system was quickly disconnected from the known crew member and CAS programs. However, things took a strange turn after that. Instead of working with the researchers to fully understand and address the issue, the DHS apparently stopped responding to their messages. Even more concerning, the Transportation Security Administration made some statements that our researchers say were dangerously incorrect. The TSA claimed that this vulnerability couldn't be used to access a known crew member checkpoint because there is a vetting process before issuing a KCM barcode. Sounds reassuring, right? Well, not so fast. Our researchers pointed out a crucial detail. A KCM barcode isn't actually required to use these checkpoints. The TSA agent can manually enter an airline employee ID. Now, here's where it gets a bit cloak and dagger. After the researchers informed the TSA about this manual entry point, the TSA quietly removed the mention of it from their website. They didn't acknowledge the correction or respond to the researchers. It's like they were trying to sweep the issue under the rug instead of addressing it head-on. This is a classic example of what security experts call security through obscurity. The misguided idea that if you don't talk about a vulnerability, it somehow becomes less of a problem. But in cybersecurity, that's like ignoring a crack in a dam and hoping it won't get worse. Let's be clear, the researchers weren't out to cause panic or disrupt air travel. Their goal was to identify and help fix a serious security flaw. By discovering and reporting this vulnerability, they were actually helping to make air travel safer for all of us. This incident raises some crucial questions about how we handle cybersecurity, especially in critical systems like airport security. It's not just about finding and fixing vulnerabilities, it's about how we respond to them when they're discovered. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but they fixed the problem, right? So we're all good now. Well, yes and no. The specific vulnerability in Flycast was addressed, which is great, but this incident highlights a broader issue: the need for ongoing vigilance and transparent communication. Let's zoom out for a moment and consider the bigger picture. Our airports and airlines are increasingly relying on digital systems to manage everything, from passenger check-ins to baggage handling and, yes, even security clearances. While these systems make things more efficient, they also create new potential vulnerabilities. Think of it like this. In the old days, a bank robber needed to physically break into a vault. Now, a cybercriminal can potentially access sensitive information from halfway around the world. The same principle applies to airport security. As we digitize more systems, we need to be extra careful about how we protect them. This brings us to an important concept in cybersecurity: the principle of least privilege. It's a fancy way of saying that users should only have access to the specific data and resources they need to do their job, nothing more. In the case of our airport security systems, this might mean ensuring that even if someone manages to breach one part of the system, they can't automatically access everything. However, implementing strong cybersecurity measures is only part of the solution. Equally important is how organizations respond when vulnerabilities are discovered. This is where the concept of responsible disclosure comes in. Responsible disclosure is a process where security researchers who discover vulnerabilities report them through the organization in question, giving them time to fix the issue before making it public. It's a crucial practice that helps improve security across the board. However, for it to work, organizations need to be receptive and responsive. In the case of our airport security vulnerability, the initial response was promising. The Department of Homeland Security took quick action to disconnect the vulnerable system, but the follow-up left something to be desired. By seemingly ignoring further communication from the researchers and making potentially misleading public statements, the authorities missed an opportunity for a more comprehensive security improvement. This brings us to a critical point. Cybersecurity is not a one-and-done deal. It's an ongoing process that requires constant attention, updates, and open communication. Just as we regularly service and upgrade our aircraft to ensure they're safe to fly, we need to continuously test, update, and improve our digital security systems. There is another twist to this tale. After the researchers' findings were made public, another expert, Alessandra Ortiz, discovered something else troubling about Flycast. Ortiz found evidence suggesting that Flycast had likely been hit by a ransomware attack in February 2024, just a few months before our Interpret researchers discovered the SQL injection flaw. This ransomware, known as Medusa Locker, had left its digital fingerprints all over Flycast system. This discovery adds another layer of concern to an already worrying situation. Not only was Flycast vulnerable to SQL injection attacks, but it had also fallen victim to ransomware. It's like finding out that not only does your house have no locks, but burglars have already been inside and are demanding money to let you back in. The ransomware attack raises even more questions about the security practices at Flycast. How did the attackers get in? What data might they have accessed? And perhaps most importantly, how could a system so crucial to airline security fall victim to not one, but two major security issues in such a short period? So, what do you think? Will airline companies take a serious note and improve their security system? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.